Come now, all you mangy dogs. Swab the decks and hoist the sails. The guns on board be needing some proper manning. Pieces of 8 and a fine wench on your arm, if your work be not too shoddy. Careful not to flounder too badly, though, or you may have to dance the hempen jig as we see you to Davy Jones. Jeffy, my boy, on with the show.
Welcome, everyone, once again aboard the Robin Hood, episode 22 of Pirate Radio Podcasts. Broadcasting this week, as always, from under heavily sprayed South Korean skies, I'm your host, ship's Chief Communications Officer, Jeffy Ryder. For those with an interest in East Asian culture and affairs, today's show aims to prove especially intriguing. One of South Korea's most prominent cult awareness activists, historian, public speaker, and blogger, Peter Daley joins us. As over the course of our scheduled 90-minute interview, we plan to discuss Korea's titanic SEWOL ferry disaster and the web of intrigue surrounding cult billionaire Yoo Byung-eun. Other related issues will include exposing the history of corruption behind several equally prominent cults and fringe religious groups, including Korea's JMS, Scientology, and the Moonies. Well, many of our regular listeners are aware I've called Korea my home since bidding adieu to Canada in 2002. This is actually only the second time we've turned our sights so far on exploring domestic content. While we hope a few similar productions will be coming along from time to time, the captain's orders are that we maintain a scope which more typically continues to encompass a much broader and cosmopolitan approach than one which is merely myopic, isolated, and inward-looking, seeking only to explore issues related to the tiny Asian peninsula and its fascist military dictatorship. Just a few words now regarding today's special guest, Peter Daley, an Australian living in Korea since 2003. He studied the nation's cults intensively for the past 13 years and currently works as an English teacher at a Seoul-based university. A member of the International Cultic Studies Association, ICSA, Peter was a speaker at its 2014 Washington, D.C. conference. Also in the same year, he began volunteering with the Teach North Korean Refugees program and has assisted several members to prepare speeches detailing their lives and ultimate escape from the DPRK. His main websites include jmscult.com and peterdaley.net. And on that note, let us now welcome Peter aboard. How did the
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. How did the speech at the DMZ go on Friday?
It was a really memorable and special and moving event. I was really honoured to be involved and to have been asked to speak. Lots of tears. Very important issue, of course, especially for the family. Did you fill your listeners in on the background?
Yeah, that was you couldn't hear it. That was part of the intro that we had there. So we covered that. And basically with the North Korean refugee, you're assisting the North Korean refugees and have been doing so for the past few years, I guess.
About a couple of years, yeah, with an NGO called Teach North Korean Refugees. It's founded by Casey Latiga and Ungu Lee, who works for the Unification Ministry. Yesterday's event was a little bit different, though. It was organised by the son of a kidnap victim. His father was on an airline in 1969, a domestic South Korean flight, and it was hijacked by North Korea. And there were 50 people on board, and about 39 were released a few months later. But now here we are 47 years later, and families are still awaiting the release of the remaining victims, and he's just trying to rekindle some interest and awareness in the case.
I'd never even heard of that, actually. So there's still a number of passengers from this flight that are being held prisoner.
Yeah, passengers and crew, 11 of them.
I'm not sure. That's interesting. It's actually, well, now that you raise the subject, not too many people know about this, but there's an ongoing issue within some circles, at least, regarding prisoners of war and MIAs. Or MIAs, I should say that not, and this goes back not just to the Korean War, but actually Vietnam as well, where according to multiple reports, POWs, American Western POWs, and so forth, were actually were spirited away to North Korea, and that's where they've been ever since. So. It's that is a show in itself, and one which I would at some point, I think, and the captain too, the captain of the ship, Long John Sinclair would probably enjoy covering. But speaking of the captain and the ship, we have a little thing here where Pirate Larry. Do we hang on just a second? Let's see. I gotta check my see if we got him. Pirate Larry, are you there with us? Do we have you?
Jeffy, I'm here.
Oh, we got you. Great. Okay, so do you want to remind Peter of what it is that we do as far as like being able to grant guests passage onto the Robin Hood?
This is a fine ship, Jeffy. It's a fine ship. Well, it travels across the whole pirate radio network, which is teeming with listeners who want to hear things that you'd never hear anywhere else.
Well, that's right. We are the
stories. These are stories they're only told in the Scurvy Dog Inn, Jeffy.
That is a rather infamous and notorious, some would say legendary, drinking establishment, most definitely. So, but no, really, what I was. Thank you for that, Larry. What was really getting at there, Peter, was I think kind of along the lines of what I'd mentioned earlier. In the lead up to the interview, as far as having a little pirate story or a joke or a shanty or something, just a little reference of some kind, in order to be granted passage onto the ship. That's just one of the show's formalities. Do you have anything ready for it?
I do have something, yeah. I drew a few blanks a few days ago, but I just came up with something. I'm a big fan of film and television music. And there's a show called Black Sails, which is airing at the moment. I think there's been 3 seasons. And the composer is a guy called Bear McCreary. He wrote some music for the Battlestar Galactica reboot, and he does the Walking Dead series in addition to a few other pieces. So I'm going to play a little piece of his arrangement of a traditional piece called The Parson's Farewell, which is very piratey. So I'll press iTunes and see if you can hear this for a few seconds.
Okay, and just before you do that, Peter, I'm just gonna draw to your attention. Your levels are kind of loud here on this end, so you might want to kind of bring them down a few.
I'm on my iPhone. How does that? I'm turning the volume down a bit.
Bring it down a little bit there, yeah. So, and how long is the song? Just what is it? A minute or so, or we need
play you 10 seconds.
You know what? How about if 30? Give us 30 seconds.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, you bet.
Was that too loud?
I was okay, man. That seems to serve the purpose and fit the bill. Pirate Larry, what do you think of that one?
It is great. It'll blow wind in your sails, Jeffy.
That's a little bit of that. What do you call that breed of that type of music that you perform there down in Baja? That death metal or love metal or some kind of black metal? I don't know what is that exactly that you do down there in Baja with your musical ventures.
The music I do is acoustic folk metal, but there's all kinds of metal down here in Baja. Yeah.
All right, so a little
acoustic
bit
of folk metal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that and Piritos de Dios once again, just to remind listeners, the name of Larry's his musical group and the project that he's working on down there been part of over the past few years. So, okay, back to our guest, Peter. So now the way I was in the build-up and putting together notes for the show here, and I know we've talked about this, and you've got a far better grasp, it seems, regarding JMS, and I think Shincheonji probably too. And I was been looking into things in the lead up to the discussion here and the interview. It seems there's so many different cults, it seems, in Korea, and in fact, I've been kind of led to believe by some that Korea has the most cults per capita in all the world. Is that not a relatively accurate statement?
I haven't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me if that turned out to be true. There do seem to be the country seems to be littered with these little groups, Bible-based with their messiahs and non-Bible-based with their other people who have had revelations from the universe or the spirit world and so on. They seem to be, they're pretty much everywhere. Once you know they exist, it's hard to walk a couple of blocks without seeing one a recruiter for one or a sign for another.
Well, Reverend Sung Young Moon, I know you seem to know something about the Moonies, and once again, in the introduction, we did draw to the listeners' attention that you've been studying this area for the past 13 years approximately. So, I would consider you. I mean, you seem to be something of an expert in a number of ways.
Perhaps I prefer to think of myself as someone who's maybe obsessed with cults rather than as an expert. But I know I have been reading a lot on the subject. I try to attend events where possible, so I have kind of tried to immerse myself as much as possible without being a member of these groups, so as a kind of outsider looking in. And there's so many fascinating aspects to these groups, some funny aspects and some disturbing and heartbreaking aspects as well.
Have you managed by chance to in any way infiltrate via stealth?
I think I've blown that chance because I'm quite well known now to quite a few of the groups.
I see.
There was a case where I was asked to, the Heavenly Mother, Church of God, our father wanted to get someone kind of closer to the inside because his daughter was involved. And that's actually quite a funny story because what happened was we were exchanging some emails, and Heavenly Mother's a group that are quite visible. Sometimes they're on the street and they actually approach people, and they're actually quite open about their belief that their leader is the Messiah. And I'd seen one of their recruiters like about a week earlier before I heard from his father outside a Home Plus, and suddenly I had to go looking for a recruiter, and there's never one around when you want one. You see them when you're not looking, and suddenly after deciding to try and infiltrate, I couldn't find a recruiter anywhere. But the funny thing was the Church of God set up fake websites critical of them. And their idea was to try and catch passwords of critics. So they'd hope that people would register at these sites and use a password that they used on other places. And I actually fell for that trap. It was pretty early on in my days. And the attempt to join them got nowhere. But a few years later, I heard from an ex-member who said that he'd been monitoring my email at the time. So they were... The Heavenly Mother cult was reading these exchanges between me and the father about trying to infiltrate. So it was a pretty interesting experience, and it taught me something about password protection and being a bit more careful with the passwords I use. So now I have different passwords for everything, and that's quite a pain in the ass, to be honest, but it's safer.
Yeah, I mean, you might even, I'm not sure if you've considered this at this point or not, but taking the encryption route as well as a potential, just as a secondary kind of
I know there's those master key websites where you have the one master key and then it stores all your information for the logins. So since then I've just changed passwords and have different passwords for different accounts. Mm-hmm. I would think I do need something a little bit better.
Going back to this messianic ideal, because it seems not just, and I'd like to say, I'd like to look into the Reverend Sung Young Moon. Is it Sung Myung Moon? I believe is Sung Myung Moon. Yes.
Moon Sung Young.
Moon Sung Myung. Okay, there we go.
Moon's the family name, so. Yeah.
And of course, he passed away just a couple of years ago. But one of the central sort of tenets and one of the myths, at least from an outsider's perspective, it's all, it's kind of a little bit overblown, of course, and a lot of, people have, I think, every right to be skeptical, but he claimed to be the Messiah, Jesus returned and so forth. But this is you find this, it's just not limited to the Moonies, their particular narrative and storyline, but you find this with other cults kind of picking up on this and wanting to promote that idea as well, that each of the cult leaders is the chosen one, correct?
Yeah, no, it's quite common. And what we see these days are splinter groups, so people that have left the Unification Church and some other groups that were quite active in the 60s and 70s, people with experience in these groups, starting their own groups. And a lot of them are pretty much miniature versions of the Moonies. And even groups like Dan Yoga, for example, which isn't kind of Bible-based, but that has some connection to the Moonies as well. So the Moonies didn't start this thing, but they certainly were one of the more successful of the cults, especially in the 60s and 70s, especially in terms of wealth generation. And yeah, we get these little carbon copies of these groups. So there's lots of these groups. They do claim to be, their leaders do claim to have this special role. That's one of the identifying factors of a cult, and one of the warning signs. If you have a leader who claims to be the sole spokesman for God, or the sole holder of some sort of secret knowledge, or the sole ability to heal people, that's quite a warning sign, because it can lead to exploitation when indoctrination takes place, and these people believe absolutely that their leader is God's spokesperson.
So yeah, along the lines of what you just hit on here regarding splinter groups, that's one of the things that occurred within the context of Yoo Byung-eun's his tradition, his history, the way him and his father-in-law back in the early 60s, I believe, they set up the there's I'm not sure what the first church was, but a number of offshoots, including the Evangelical Baptist Church. So, but what was the original? It was the Salvation Sect or something like that.
Well, it's a little bit confusing and not very helpful. But there's a term called Guwonpa in Korean, which basically means salvation sect, but it actually refers to three groups, and those three groups are quite separate these days, but they have a shared origin, and that was actually through a Bible school run by an American missionary. So that's their ties. So these leaders all kind of knew each other, but they went their separate ways. And there's three groups now that are separate, but they're called collectively Guwonpa. And Yoo Byung-eun's group is one of them. Now it's the most notorious. I mean, before the ferry sinking, it was almost unknown, really. And it gets back to the kind of hijacking of the plane. It's amazing how crimes and these stories can fall under everybody's radar, because a lot of people had forgotten about the airliner, and a lot of people had forgotten about Yoo Byung-eun's previous convictions, and that's something that enabled him to rebrand himself and buy new companies and just continue the scams that he'd been running for quite a while.
Just to revisit, and you mentioned the airliner. I guess the first time around, I didn't quite pick up on what it was. What's the cult connection to that incident?
Well, it was North Korea, but I was just saying that it's easy for just these events and these groups just to fly under the radar and almost be forgotten by most of society. And the airliner, a lot of people hadn't heard of the airliner event, and a lot of people before the ferry sinking, they had no idea that the ferry company was owned by a convicted felon and the leader of a cult. And I'm sure that the school that booked the trip, perhaps if this had been common knowledge, they might have booked their passage on a ferry that wasn't run by a cult leader with a criminal history.
And that's probably the way they like it too. Just like organized crime, they don't really like to advertise themselves too openly.
I know, and there's various front groups, transitory front groups. They kind of on one day they call themselves the biggest and the best whatever group, and then the next day it's gone, and then there's a new group populated by the same people but rebranding with a different name, and they kind of pretend that the old group didn't exist, especially when the old group, has been exposed to some extent. That's what we saw with Scientology. They claim to be the greatest volunteer organization in the world under the name Manam, and then once they were exposed, that Manam just disappeared completely. Went from being the greatest to the least in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm. So, and those are the three biggest cults, if I've got my facts straight here, and is the one that under Yoo Byung-eun, which the formal name there is the Salvation Sect. Do I have that right?
Salvation Sect. What do they call themselves? They call themselves something like
Evangelical Baptist Church.
Yeah,
it's another offshoot.
The same name.
So
I'm not sure about in terms of biggest. I mean, Scientology is the most visible. They have a lot of public events. They fill stadiums and they organise large protests. There seems to be a common number of about between 100 and 150,000 members, which seems to be the number of members in quite a few of these groups. I don't know whether there's something about that number that makes it easy for the groups to control, or whether when they get more members, they more leave or whatever. But I've seen the same numbers for a lot of these Masonic groups.
And then the third one is JMS, which you yourself have had considerable amount of experience with, and a number of run-ins, and even I mean, if we're going to get into it now, it's gonna take up a lot of time. It could potentially, at least, but why don't we?
I can give you the short version.
Let's do that, and especially and regarding the attempt for that, they're trying to sue you and all kinds of different things. So yeah, if you could just.
Well, that's an offshoot of the Unification Church, the Moonies, and that's a good example of a carbon copy, a smaller version. That's the cult I first encountered, so that's the group that got me interested in this topic. And my first year in Korea was spent in a small town in the mountains just south of Daejeon, and it just happened to be the closest town to the base of this cult. And through a series of little adventures, and I realized that I discovered what this cult was, and at the time it was led by a guy who was wanted for rape by Interpol. He'd fled Korea a few years earlier after rape allegations were aired on TV, and there was no information about them in English at the time, and I knew a few members, and my roommate just left the group and was harassed and threatened, and I seemed to be in the right place at the right time to start correcting the lack of English information about it. And that's just continued to this day, and I guess my site's gotten bigger and I've had some more media interest. And so the cult's seen me as more of a threat. I think for the first maybe kind of decade, I can't believe it's been that long, I was maybe a little annoying little fly, because they had more things to worry about with Korean NGOs that were trying to stop them and trying to track down the leader while he was a fugitive. Where things stand today is the leader is coming to the end of his 10-year jail sentence. He's due to be released next year. And there's more awareness and interest of my site and this cult. So the JMS group is very keen on trying to close my site and stop me looking at them. So I got a number of. They threatened to sue me quite a few times, and I think that was just an intimidation tactic. And then they went looking for something to sue me. With, and what they struck upon was actually quite interesting. It's essentially a sex cult. The leader, a rape cult, really. I shouldn't use the word sex, because rape, of course, isn't sex. This comes from the Moonies as well, and it comes from an earlier group from the early 1900s. The idea that original sin that Adam and Eve committed was having sex before they were ready, or something like that. And if you have sex with the Messiah, you're cured of that original sin, and that helps you get to heaven. And then if the woman who's cured of original sin gets married off to some other guy, then he becomes pure and their children are pure, and then soon the world will be populated by these people of original sin. Of course, they keep that knowledge quite secret, but the group operates... how it operates is that numerous front groups that are just geared towards attracting young, beautiful women, modelling front groups, dance front groups, and so on.
Right.
So the whole organisation is geared towards indoctrinating young women to believe the leader is the Messiah, and then selected ones are chosen for deeper indoctrination. So what they sued me with was, in 2012, a senior member left, and he took with him some quite explosive video material from deep inside the cult, and that was naked university students recording themselves dancing and singing to the leader, "I love you and I miss you," while he was a fugitive. So there's this video of like 8 or 9 girls that take their clothes off and keep saying, "Songsen Nim, we love you, we miss you." And it was heavily pixelated, and it was released at a press conference in 2012. And I got hold of the video and I put it on my site because I thought it was very important material and very indicative of what the cult has in mind for selected young women. And so they tried to sue me over that. So they tried to sue me for defamation, but the girls weren't mentioned. I didn't know their names, and it was heavily pixelated and kind of spreading pornographic material. And over a period of 6 months, and it's quite a long story, but I won't go into that, but I was totally cleared by the prosecution. I got this lovely letter from them saying that myself and the former members who released the material released it in the public interest to warn people about this dangerous group. So they tried to sue me and failed, and I kind of stuck to my guns. And I think that case is definitely over. I mean, they still might try something else, but I think that was their best chance legally, at least, and that failed. And it's just since given me more ammunition. And an interesting thing is, some members have seen these videos on my site, and it was mentioned in a couple of other reports. The group tells its members that these videos were faked by outsiders and critics who are under the influence of Satan. But in trying to sue me, they claimed copyright of this video.
Yeah.
And the girls came forward and said that, these members came forward and said it was them in the video. So They totally admitted that the video was real in trying to sue me. So it was quite interesting. They gave me a lot of extra ammunition to use against them. It wasn't a nice experience, having to go through that and having a police interview and a meeting with prosecutors. At the same time, I did relish the opportunity to share my experiences with the authorities, and it was nice to have them examine my website and examine my history and say, keep it up, pretty much. So.
Oh, they thought they kind of endorsed your.
They said it was done in the public interest, and it was to warn people. And I had some nice conversations at the immigration office because I was renewing my visa when the court case was getting resolved, and I received some very encouraging words from immigration officers. And I don't think immigration officers are known for giving words of encouragement to people renewing their visas. Well, it was nice.
I think one of the things that's quite obvious is that you're fortunate that your officer was not one of these cult members. That things might have not worked out so much in your favor.
Well, actually, a prosecutor was sacked about 7 years ago who was a member of the cult, and that prosecutor had leaked victim information to the cult leader. So he was found out and discovered. So it certainly crossed my mind that somebody there could be a member of this cult. I think its influence has faded since he was arrested. He was arrested in 2007 in China and then sentenced to 10 years. So that's the case that really got me interested, and I just kind of stumbled upon this extraordinary story that hadn't been covered yet. And then my interest has just grown, and then gradually more and more groups came to my attention. Either I found them myself or people told me about them. I'd get emails from family and friends of members. And so, I started adding groups to my website, and then began to notice, these groups are pretty much, all the same in terms of their tactics. They might dress themselves up in different suits in different colours, but, on the inside, they're essentially all criminal organisations, really, using this blueprint that Moon was successful with.
Mm-hmm. And just for listeners who are wondering, JMS, I believe it stands for Jong Myung-suk, which is the name of the founder of the release.
Yeah, that's the leader. It also had Jesus Morning Star, which is a Bible reference somewhere. I haven't really explored that. And they have an official name in Korea, which is what do they call themselves? Christian Gospel. Sorry, there's so many similar names. I'll come back to that in a second because I haven't really.
Well, One of the things that I was interested in, and you kind of brought it up a little bit when you referenced officials and prosecutors and insiders, establishment insiders. But this, now I think it might have been through one of the other cult leaders, but there was some involvement. High-ranking police in the UK got ensnared in all of this, because this is like an international operation. Apparently, they were seduced into, if I've got my story straight here, they were offered massages from, I guess, some of these beautiful young ladies, and there were videos taken of this.
A different cult. Massages, yeah, it sounds a bit kind of sleazy, but the massages themselves weren't. This was a non-Bible-based group whose entire leadership was arrested in 1999 in Korea for fraud. There are about 40 arrests, and it's very indicative of how these cults operate. A group can have a criminal history and a terrible reputation in Korea, but they go overseas and register as a charity and change their name, and they're good to go from scratch. And this group with a criminal history in Korea set itself up as a charity in the UK, and they still operate. And they kind of give acupuncture, massage, therapy to help people's key energy come into balance, and their ancestral energy and all that kind of thing. And what they did, they offered all these treatments to police officers as the way to reduce their stress. So they weren't like happy ending massages. They were, acupuncture, just
for well-being.
The shoulders, well-being massages. And they offered them all for free. And the result was that a lot of policemen appeared in videos promoting this group, saying this group is great, they really helped us a lot, I felt so better after their massages. And, who doesn't feel good after a massage? Yeah. But the interesting thing is, a lot of these policemen, they don't identify themselves, but one did, and he identified himself as Commander Simon Foy. And he went on to be the head of homicide and serious crime at Scotland Yard. So he was one of the top police officers in the country. He was totally duped by this cult. It was just astounding. But the downside is this group, they claim to be able to cure people. This is the inner teachings. They don't tell this to outsiders, and they certainly didn't tell the police, is that they can cure you. They can cure you. You don't need chemotherapy. You don't need drugs. But this cure comes at quite a financial cost, and that was how they scammed people in Korea. People were giving over their life savings, and for cures that just didn't exist. And there was a British Army officer, a young woman in her late 20s, who developed breast cancer, and she paid this group £16,000, and they told her that not to take chemo, that they would take care of her, and she was desperate for a cure, and she died. Soon after that, she tried to get her money back just before she died, but it shows the impact. These cults, especially the cults that claim to cure people, as scams. Now, this was several years after Simon Foy's video, but it's entirely possible that she was shown that video as part of the initial indoctrination. And what a way to ease suspicions than by showing the leader, one of the top policemen in the country, endorsing your group. And I've tried numerous times to get in touch with Simon Foy without success. There was one interesting case where I actually called Scotland Yard, because this is when I first stumbled upon it, so it was entirely possible he wasn't aware of this, and it was soon after the videos. And I called his office, and this young police officer answered the phone, and I said, "Can I speak to Simon Foy?" And he said, "What is it concerning?" So I kind of said, well, he just endorsed this Korean doomsday cult that kills people. And he also lived this funny pause. Yeah. And he said, "Okay, I'll transfer you." And then he put me through to his assistant, and I talked to her and sent an email to her and never heard back. He's retired now. I've still, every now and then I try and contact him, or I send him a tweet. Anyway, he doesn't reply. No,
I wouldn't imagine it'd be something that it kind of left him with a little bit of egg on his face.
Definitely.
But let's see. I think we got Pirate Larry might be standing by. Let's just check here and see if he's in fact Larry. You still up there in the crow's nest, or maybe he's fallen asleep? I have no idea.
No, Jeffy, I'm still here.
So Yeah, what I was going to ask you actually was what is the situation like in Mexico? Do you find any similar sort of goings on or cultural, that's with the cults and those sort of things? People getting duped out of their money and life savings.
I think they're more blatant here. The Osho group is down here. The Gnostics are down here, but the trafficking and all that stuff is really being done by the cartels. There's one cartel, I believe, that thinks that they're on a religious mission. But I really haven't heard much about them lately.
Yeah, all right. Well, and I think Catholicism too. There must be some Catholic cults or little offshoots of some kind. I think there's a death cult or two down in. They worship like a death goddess or something. Do they not in certain parts of Mexico?
Well, there's the Sangria cult, and the Santeria cult. Those are the ones that kill chicken. You have to pay money. They scatter the chicken pieces around, and I don't know. Then there's non-surgical healers.
Oh, geez.
That pull rotten chicken parts out of the body.
Yeah.
There's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Santeria, I think, has its roots in Cuba, actually, and actually one of the sort of practitioners of that. He was raised in that tradition is the comedian Joey Coco Diaz, who actually, believe it or not, has a profile that he's put together over on Minds.com. So, which is something actually that I'd like to talk to Peter about here for a second. So, thank you for those comments, Larry. Back to your watch, and be sure to keep us updated if anything out of the ordinary comes along. And he's gone. So, yeah, Peter, have you heard of Minds.com? This is a bit of a non sequitur, but sometimes that's how this show goes. So,
no, I haven't, but I'm curious to hear more.
Well, because it's like an alternative to Facebook, basically, and we have a bit of a presence over there as well, and they like to promote themselves as encrypted, anonymous, because and open sourced, if you know anything about open source technology or programming. So. But the encryption end of things helps to maintain one's anonymity and privacy. So unlike Facebook, you're free to just use whatever nom de guerre or pseudonym you choose. So, but the point really here is that what we try to do is encourage all of our guests really to at least give it a look, check things out, and you'd be surprised because there are quite a few activists, believe it or not, that are actually part of things. Yeah. There was some anonymous type, some people might call them hackers, but I mean, they might just regard themselves as programmers or people that are into computer coding and whatnot. But they've helped, to set things up and get things to the point now where we've got, the hashtag database in place, and the search function is working. There's all kinds of groups that are popping up. So really, I think it'd be great though if you could set up a channel over there and your own little kind of cult awareness group, and I think you would attract a lot of attention. So that's just another platform where you'd be able to get your message out and hopefully be able to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really look into it.
Yeah.
One thing that's been really amazing is just how easy it is now to network, and the amount of people I've encountered just online.
Right.
I really appreciate the chance to explore another platform.
Well, and here, speaking of non sequiturs, let's try to make a smooth transition now if we can. But because you're regarding networking and so forth, Aaron Snowberger, and we're going to get into the SEWOL now, so buckle up. He was the guy, and he's a mutual friend of ours, I guess, through Facebook. I'm not sure if you've actually met him or spoken with him or not.
We go way back on some expat forums here. So we've got a kind of long history together on online forums.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank him, though, just kind of formally, because he was actually I first came across his articles, and we'll link them up. We got them in the show notes here, but and I think I shared the notes with you as well, but One was it's keytokorean.com, the blog that he's got put together there, and the title of the story is "Falling Down the Rabbit Hole in Search of Korea's Most Wanted Man." And there's a second one, which I'm not sure if I can find the link to at this particular moment, but we'll include it in the show notes. So these are two really great articles, though, that he's put together. He's proven himself to be quite a investigative journalist and writer. So kudos to him. But so let's just take a look for a few minutes now. I know you said this wasn't your forte necessarily. We can always come back to some of these other issues though, and so forth. But
no, I did take an interest in the time, and I've got a lot of material on. I'm happy to talk about it.
Let's.
The JMS case kind of consumed me for the last 6 months, but we can talk about Mr. Yoo Byung-eun as well, and his ego, Ahe, and what he got to.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. That's what I was hoping to do. So the SEWOL was just recently, I guess, brought to the surface. Just to think this past week. So it's been a little over 2 years now.
Started, I don't know if they did it, but I know they started to.
Yeah. It's been a little over 2 years now since the disaster. And let's just try, if we can, to back things up. And if how you basically, the impression that left on you, I mean, it was a major national tragedy, of course, and left a lot of people, even, myself. These aren't my kids or anything necessarily, but I was teaching, I was working, in my class that day with my students, and it was quite heart-wrenching and sad. We had a little talk about things, and there were kids that were pretty much like the similar ages as the ones who lost their lives, and asked them if they had any friends that were on board, and they said no, thankfully, and so on and so forth. But it was kind of heart-wrenching, to say the least. So, but of course, so everyone heard of that. And then when did you first discover? Well, I guess it's through the news. It came out in the media that there was this cult connection. Did you know about Yoo Byung-eun before the sinking of the SEWOL?
That's a funny question, because actually several months earlier, I got a friend to translate a Korean article that talked about the top cults active on campuses. Mm-hmm. And it mainly talked about Shincheonji, JMS, and another Guwon-pa group, IYF, International Youth Fellowship. And there was actually a reference to Yoo Byung-eun in that article. So I got that translated. This was a few months before it, but I just kind of skimmed it, and it just said it was just another leader of this breakaway sect. So I didn't really pay much attention. But I think that there were a few stories earlier about him and about his earlier arrest. And then pretty much a couple of days after the sinking, one article caught my eye, and it was just a sentence, and it just made reference to the owner of the ferry having some connections to a religious group. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, hang on, there's got to be something here. And it just got weirder and weirder. And then they were reading about this mass murder-suicide of 32 people. His arrest in the 90s, his investigation of being connected to that. Well, and then Harry rebranded himself and so on. So it really was going down a rabbit hole. Just things got weirder and weirder, and almost every day there was the holy shit moment. I can't believe I'm reading this.
But hang on just a second, because that was one of the notes that I kind of picked up on and set aside, because this is something I've heard about myself, and some people that have looked in these matters, they do know about, of course, because it was pretty pretty significant, a big event. But yeah, 1987, 33 members, and it's interesting for people that are in Masonic and esoterica and so forth. That 33 kind of jumps out at them, I'm sure, as being having some significance. But the cult Odeyang, I see. So he was once a member of the cult. I see, and
he had connections to the leader, a female leader, and money was. I believe he received money from the group, and in these kind of organisations, money doesn't go sideways; it goes to the top. Mm-hmm. So there were connections there. The group currently denies it quite adamantly, but I honestly think that's to be expected. So he was investigated as having ties to this group. And when we talk about murder-suicide, some of these people were gagged and bound. We're not talking about suicide. We're not talking about people deciding to end their lives. And there are some rumours that they were killed because the government had started investigating them, and there were things to hide. And So that's a possibility. But it seems like there was definitely some connection with Yoo Byung-eun.
Well,
That group.
the leader supposedly, Park Soon-ja, was said to be have been among the dead. This is an end of the world, a doomsday cult, I guess, is what they kind of how they that's the way they've kind of packaged themselves. But is there any chance? I mean, did you have an alibi? Maybe he was the leading force and mastermind behind this mass murder.
I think that's possible.
It hasn't.
I heard some. I think that's not completely unlikely.
It hasn't been ruled out, I guess. Then.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he was convicted of fraud and served 4 years. So it was certainly up to some illegal things.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was really interesting was between that time and the ferry disaster, he reinvented himself. It's like the group that I mentioned that went to England to rebrand themselves. That's pretty much what he did, and he reinvented himself as this reclusive nature photographer.
Right.
That spent 4 years taking 2.7 million photos out the same window.
Which is shades kind of. I mean, come on. I mean, you think North Korea, Kim Jong-un and his father. It's like what refresh my memory. His father's name that just passed away a couple of years ago. The former dictator Kim Il Jong, and then Kim Il Sung, his father. Yeah, Kim Il Jong was just an amazing golfer. Apparently, he couldn't help but score just repeated hole-in-ones every time he hit the ball. So it's like one of those kind of things, I guess, right? So it's the heroic.
Yeah, I mean that's what these groups do. I think they try to outdo themselves.
Right.
It seems like the crazier the claim, the more likely indoctrinated people believe it.
Yeah.
So this 2.7 million photos out the same window over a 4-year period, it comes out to be like one every 45 seconds or something.
Yeah.
But that's with only sleeping 1 or 2 hours a day. So it was just ridiculous.
And what's the point? What's the point? I mean, it's just because you've got so many pictures.
It's interesting because they spent all this money in New York galleries and then at the Louvre in Paris. He donated millions and millions to them. But the idea was, and I don't know how profitable it was, but it was to create this illusion that these pictures are very expensive. And then people in his cult and companies under his control would then buy these pictures from him, so as a way to put money into his bank account. And members thought that him being a famous photographer would somehow cleanse his reputation, which had previously been as a fraudster, connected with this mass suicide, which isn't a very good reputation to have. But anyway, so he took this roadshow to New York and to the Louvre in Paris. His name, Ahe, is engraved in the Louvre. It cost tens of millions of pounds or something. It just shows you how much money they had to burn, which is especially interesting when you look at how much money wasn't spent on the ferry. The crew were receiving the lowest rate wages in the industry, little training, hardly any safety training, and yet at the top, millions and millions of dollars was being spent glorifying the leader. And I started this pirate thing with a mention that I like film music.
Yeah.
We played a piece for Ben McCreary. The London Symphony Orchestra, one of the top orchestras in the world, and they played on the first 6 Star Wars and Indiana Jones soundtracks under John Williams. They recorded a symphony dedicated to Ahe, which was written by composer Michael Nyman, and it was recorded just a couple of months before the ferry disaster.
Jeez.
So it's amazing how this line, and they the claim that he'd taken 2.7 million photos out the same window from the same room without leaving the room in that 4-year period was posted openly on their website. So it's amazing when these people became involved and didn't see any warning signs, or maybe the cash overruled their concerns.
Yeah.
But we have some of Europe's premier artistic organisations jumping into bed with Ahe, who a few months later was revealed to be the leader of the owner of the SEWOL ferry.
Yeah, we've got a slideshow actually running right now where we're live streaming over YouTube. So there's a few of the you can see a few of those photos that were downloaded, and they're part of that the visual experience that people can enjoy with the live streaming end of things. So, and as far as the London Symphony Orchestra, you got to wonder, it's like, was it simply out of sheer exuberance and artistic inspiration that they put this tribute piece together, or was there maybe something a little more going on in the sense of money under the table, or
they would have been hired, so there would have been certainly
they were commissioned
financially. But there's a really funny story which shows that they were being courted by the cult well before then. The London Symphony Orchestra came to Korea like a couple of years earlier, and one of the members has a blog. He's the principal flute player, and it's a post he's since deleted, which is interesting, but it's saved on the Internet Archive, and I've got a copy. And it's not really damning. It doesn't say anything about him, but they actually went out one night and they were introduced to Yoo Byung-eun's oldest son, who's now in jail. So there were these connections. The group was trying to bring itself into contact with these organisations, and that of course is similar to the police in the UK. These groups try to attach themselves to legitimate organisations and kind of borrow or steal their legitimacy. If London Symphony Orchestra writes for us, we're good. Just in most cases it would be true, but not always. But it's interesting. I've been following the composer Michael Nyman, who wrote the film score for the movie The Piano. And it's an interesting parallel because he wrote a symphonic cycle, and they weren't numbered consecutively, but number 6, which is Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, is his Ahe Symphony. But his Symphony number 11 is dedicated to the victims of the Hillsborough soccer disaster, where a stadium collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been very big on, he's always talking, fair enough, it's a big disaster, it touched him as a soccer fan. But he was moved to write this symphony in honour of the victims. No problem there, but he never mentions Ahe, he totally has never mentioned the ferry disaster. So it's interesting, the parallel between one symphony written to honour the victims of a tragedy and another symphony, before the fact, written to honour the person most responsible for another tragedy. And sometimes I quip on Facebook and, hey, what about that? Why didn't you write a symphony for the victims of the SEWOL ferry after having written a symphony for the leader of the cult that was responsible for the disaster? He doesn't reply. And I got some real weird emails from his manager, just weird, just denying any knowledge and just odd emails from the manager. So they were kind of in damage control. But I think it's a bit hypocritical for him to always go on about this symphony he wrote for victims and to not even acknowledge it. I think a lot of people can learn from the mistakes these people have made. These are how cults operate. A lot of people wouldn't imagine a cult kind of operating like that. So if these more high-profile public figures would talk about how they were duped, I think, there could be a lot of benefit from that.
And that's one of the things I'd like to get into in just a few minutes before we wrap up. But first, I think we've got Pirate Larry again. He's got up in the crow's nest. I think there's a point that he'd like to make regarding the SEWOL. Larry, are you there?
Hi, Jeffy. I'm astounded that they spend millions on photographic exhibits for their leader, but only spent $400 on safety training for the boat. And didn't they also, they built something illegal on the boat. We care about, the seaworthiness of boats around here, but they built something illegal, an illegal structure on the boat that made the boat keel over when it turned.
Yeah, it added to the instability, and it was a room on the top that was going to host these pictures. It was going to be a little miniature gallery, again, to praise the cult leader. So that was one of the contributing factors. Yeah.
There was overloaded as well, too, as far as the too many cars on board. It was
overloaded. The cargo wasn't strapped properly. There were lots of surrounding circumstances, but I think they can all be pinned down to the cult money going to the top and being vacuumed up from the bottom where it needed to be spent in terms of safety, and just going up to glorifying the leader.
Larry, speaking of leaders, I think we've got a special guest on the other end here. Captain, are you there?
This be Long John Sinclair, indeed. Been listening to the show here, enjoying myself quite royally. But indeed, you must say, as a leader of a ship, there are many things that need to be taken into consideration. This man was clearly a fool, whoever was behind this operation. There was many precautions that needed to be taken. Many lives were lost unnecessarily. And to do this, you're putting too many people, their fate is in your hands. And to take these sort of risks is really, it's unforgivable.
That's all you've got to say on that matter, Captain?
Yeah, that be about it today, Chaffee. So continue enjoying the show, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Okay, well, thank you, Captain.
Thanks.
Well, there we go.
That's a sign that these groups, even everybody, is really disposable. These cults it's all about the leadership and what the leadership can gain, and it doesn't really matter who was raped, who dies of a preventable, curable illness. The overriding rule and the overriding principles are worship the leader and give the leader what he wants, because he's more important than everybody else.
Well, and as far as the SEWOL sinking, like there are, we talk about the way that it was designed, perhaps, or the excessive, the overload, the excessive weight that had been brought on board. There was too many cars.
It late as well. There were a few things. An inexperienced pilot, the young woman steering the boat at the time, wasn't being supervised. So think about her. She just made this one mistake. And she's looking at years in prison. She got a longer prison sentence than the family members of the leader, that I think are more responsible. And she was just this young kid in her early 20s, just turned the steering wheel too quickly or something.
There is another theory that's been floated, and I'm not sure how much credence I give it. Although, you see, I'm the kind of person who I try to keep an open mind, so I'm willing to hear all perspectives and views. But the theory that was floated on this occasion was that there had been some sort of underwater collision with a submarine or something along those lines. So
there's a really good report by Australian SBS, and actually I had a hand in that. Basically, one of the Yoo Byung-eun's son, who's actually still a fugitive, his assistant was posting on my forum in defense of the group, and an Australian producer used that contact, was able to gain access to the cult facility. And in that video report, I think it's called Murky Waters. If you Google SBS Australia, Murky Waters, you should be able to find it. And it shows the people putting forth this theory, and the members of the cult, it seems like they're just desperate to lay blame elsewhere. And in that report, I can't remember the specifics, but the claim was just totally shot down by some experts. It just seemed to be them grasping at straws. It couldn't possibly be our leader's fault. It hit a submarine. What it was apparently, I don't recall the specifics, but I think someone said, look, there couldn't have been a submarine there. There was just no evidence at all.
And
looking for other angles.
Yeah. Another angle, as you say, was because with the really diehard conspiracy types. They see conspiracies everywhere, and not saying conspiracies don't occur from time to time, but I'm not sure if this is really one of those occasions. But that the children, it was part of an occult kind of black magic blood sacrifice regarding, there was said to, I think, been a blood moon. Or just with the time, because they're always, looking at the timing of things and the astrological configuration of the stars and that sort of thing. So, I'm once again open to that possibility, but I have not looked into that enough to.
I haven't looked into that at all.
Yeah. But that's a good point that you make there regarding. So regarding this other theory that it was a submarine and.
Also, people looking to blame the government and less blame on the cult. And, I think there are things that are worth examining in terms of the rescue that were, apparently botched.
Yeah. So
there are things to explore, yeah.
There were, and let's not forget too, there were quite a few heroes though as well. Two people that stepped up to the plate. They were not cowardly in the moment.
Yeah.
In fact, they sacrificed they gave their lives to try and save people. So those.
I can't imagine what they went through. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it doesn't get more heroic than that. Although there were a number of rats as well that couldn't.
Well, there's the famous image of the captain getting off the ship, in his underpants or something.
Yeah.
He wasn't on the bridge; he was in his room, and there was some rumours he had company in that room. I don't know, but I think the young female pilot, I think she shouldn't have been left unsupervised, and she was.
Wasn't the captain as well? As he made his way off the ship, he was found I think was he found in his underpants, but he's also drinking alcohol or something too.
I think so. I can't remember. I think there was
stories. Yeah, but let's go.
There were a few contradictory reports at the time, but a great image. Not a great image, but I think a very telling image. Of getting off.
Yeah. And it's been about 2 years now. The ship's recently been it's reemerged, been brought to the surface, from what I could tell, at least from the photos of the news article I saw the other day.
Yeah.
But Yoo Byung-eun, he when did he exactly make a run for it? I mean, it was a massive manhunt. There was said to be like 1 million police that were looking for him.
I think if he was smart, he should have left the country within hours of the boat sinking.
Well, he tried to see.
He should have been on a beach in Tahiti like the afternoon. If he certainly had the money and the resource. But initially he made a statement saying he was sorry and he was going to work with prosecutors and he had nothing to hide and it wasn't their fault. So he made this statement at the beginning within like a few days, and then he failed to turn up to a prosecutor's meeting. And I think they offered him a chance to come in a few days later, and he didn't turn up. And that's when he became wanted, and he was hiding around the area around the compound. And there was this this huge manhunt. I mean, there was even a Navy ship involved. And I went down to the compound at the height of the manhunt, and it was just something out of like a Hollywood movie. All these police were lined up. They were checking every car that was going past, the boots, and they were looking under vehicles. It was quite an astounding sight. And there's one funny, I mean, it's funny. It is funny, actually. The police, in their search, conducted a search of a house, and he was apparently hiding in the closet, and they didn't notice him. This was by one of his assistants later. He was actually in this house when it was being searched, hiding in the closet. You'd think they would have looked in the closet. He didn't.
Yeah.
And then he was smuggled around a bit in the early days. They said he wasn't in the compound, and all the cultists were denying the police entry into the compound. Some were threatening to kill themselves. You know, they said, no, we're not a cult, but we're going to kill ourselves if you try and arrest our leader. So it was them kind of admitting what they were refuting. And then he was found dead, or apparently found dead, and his decomposed body had been found, and had been found earlier, but it hadn't been identified as him for some time. So the manhunt went on. I think, was it a couple of weeks or a few weeks? Sorry, I don't recall the specifics, but there was a while between the finding the body and then realizing that it was him.
It was 40 days. It took 40 days for the police.
That long.
Authorities to claim. I mean, they say they've now determined that it is indeed the body of former cult leader. But there's a lot of suspicion surrounding this, and talking about I mean, Korea is not exactly known for its corruption-free police services, or corporate corporate business culture. I mean. In fact, that was one of the things. I mean, it kind of is a bit of an, would you say, adjunct or offshoot, but it kind of does. It's a reflection of kind of the country that we're living in, the way that things, the lack of really justice, and just how the legal system works. That 6,000 corporate criminals were freed just last year. I think it was on the anniversary of something like the Korean Liberation Day or something from Japan.
Boost the economy or something.
That was the official reason. Like, well, they're better we better take them out of jail because we need to give a bit of a, to get the economy rolling along here. So that was the justification, and that just leaves I mean, it leaves me shaking my head, and really, it's a reflection for it's. You know, what seriously, you know, come on, like it doesn't get more crooked than that, I don't think so. But anyways, but and here's the thing too, and we'll get back into the whole body, that mystery of the corpse and so forth. You know, the different the circumstantial evidence and claims regarding that, but the culture of corruption and the nepotism, and in particular, I think this would be a good time now maybe to bring up the JYP connection, because I mean he's actually a lot of people that follow Korean culture and K-pop in particular will know that he's a pretty big name in that world, and in that Korean, high-profile, entertainment figure. But that he actually married Yoo Byung-eun's niece, and
related by marriage, yeah.
And he basically, for the longest time, there was a formal inquiry and investigation launched. The authorities, I guess, were looking into his financial dealings with his uncle and the cult, and just on multiple levels. So he's tried to distance himself as best he can from that, but it's a little, it's, what do you think of all this? Do you think it's just a guilt by association, or that
it could be? I mean, he did marry. I don't know what his history was before that, but he certainly married into a wealthy organization. That doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that he did anything wrong. And I don't know how close the niece was to the organization. Certainly the leadership and the close family, though most of them have been arrested. But it doesn't seem like criminal activity has extended too far to the extended family. So I don't know. I mean, it'd be in a horrible position, if you hadn't done anything wrong and suddenly you realise you're linked to the most hated man in the country. I'm a little bit sympathetic, but I haven't really looked into it. I'm not a big K-pop fan, so when I saw the K-pop connection, it didn't really catch my attention too much, to be honest. But I thought it was interesting. It just showed that these groups, do have large networks and ties to lots of, their fingers in lots of pies as well.
I understand. I can agree. I think that's kind of what you're saying. You can see it from both sides, and you don't want to rush to, you don't want to ever convict, of course, or try to, lay guilt on an innocent man. But the way, for example, like with the entertainment and music industry, I don't think it's any different. It might even be worse than the West.
It seems very sleazy, doesn't it? Because you hear these stories of young men being, asked to do various obvious things in order to get their shot at fame and to maintain their position.
Well, and that's my understanding too. And so I guess you really not too clear on that, but with the organized crime element and that angle, as well as you say, like the crypto prostitution end of things, or quasi prostitution, or however you want to frame it, but and a lot of so-called, in Korea, apparently one of the countries with the highest rates of suicide per capita. The thing about that, though, apparently, is that one of the reasons that's the case is because actually, in many instances, they're not really suicides. They're murders, and that what we find happening is it's a case of just covering things up. I'm not sure if they're saving face in some way, or I guess just trying to get somebody off the hook. People that are in powerful positions and they want to just kind of sweep it under the carpet, or have try to influence the public and look in the other way. Like in the case, for example, of former President Yoo Byung-eun, which a lot of people, if you look at that story, a lot of people, just because of the inconsistencies in the bodyguard's testimony, what he had to offer, the way he was flip-flopping numerous times, and it's really kind of leaves you scratching your head, almost along pretty much along the lines of what we found with and I've seen with the body of this corpse. It's highly it was decomposed, decayed, barely barely.
Yeah, it was a shame it wasn't more recognisable, and it would have left no doubt.
So
I do like the idea of him dying alone on a hill, exposed.
Yeah.
But he certainly had enough money, I think, and resources to have pulled something else off if he had the brain.
There you go.
Opportunity. I mean, there wasn't a lot of pressure, though. I mean, this manhunt was huge, so I can also see him running out of perhaps allies.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so I don't know.
What do you think? I'm not sure. What was on the site where the body was found? Which, there's even, I didn't get it, but maybe I could add it. There was a picture of the corpse actually that is available on the internet, and I forgot to add that to the slideshow, but maybe do that later. Do you know much about what was found on his person at the time?
I think there was some empty soju bottles. There was something about a gun, but the cult maintained it was just an antique. It wasn't actually a workable murder gun. And there was something about cash. There were a few bags of cash either found at his hideout or something like that. So one theory is that maybe he had lots of cash with him, and one of his lieutenants kind of offed him and made off with the cash, which probably would have been a lot of cash. So that's I don't think that's implausible.
But what about the issue of sure that's got potential. What about the rapid decomposition of the body though? A lot of people, it's like there's just too many coincidences. It was stacking up.
Coming up to pretty much summer though. I haven't really checked out the speed of decomposition in that kind of environment. I'm not really sure. I mean, I was more interested in how they operated while he was alive rather than what happened afterwards. Whether he's dead or whether he's on an island in Tahiti.
Just a couple regarding the soju. I know you brought that up. Do you realize that it was actually dated 2003? The bottle.
Dated 2003.
The bottle of soju was 2003.
Oh, okay.
And here's another thing too. The head was totally removed from the corpse.
It was, yeah.
And people said, well, wait a minute, where's his walking cane? He always had his walking cane with him. It wasn't on the site. It wasn't found on location. Guess what showed up the next day?
Oh, did it? What, nearby? Or?
His walking cane magically showed up right beside the body. Yeah, just magically the next day. So I mean, it's like, come on. It's like something's just not adding up here. But let me just see, because I think Pirate Larry is, if he's still there, we're gonna see if we can bring him into the conversation here in a second. But are you there, Larry?
Yes, Jaffe, I'm here.
Yeah, you had something to say about you thought regarding this whole issue of the leader's passage, the fake body, and maybe sacrificing of an illegitimate son. Where did you come up with that one?
I think all these cult leaders have illegitimate sons, I think.
Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I would believe that a lot of cult leaders had illegitimate sons.
Right. Well,
so that's where you get the DNA.
Okay. Right. I see. Yeah, and it was a very small sample too from his finger. Apparently, one little tiny little sample, supposedly from his finger. That's how the official story goes, at least.
I think the dental records though confirmed, didn't they say that?
I don't know. I'd have to look into that. So, but did he have dentures? Did he wear dentures?
Because one of the cult's dentists, his own personal dentist, apparently.
Well, there was no head. There was no head.
Yeah, the head was.
No, it was just detached. The head was there. It was just moved a little. It was just not attached to the body.
A little strange. But now you're saying earlier, Larry, is that all you want to say as far as
Yeah.
That's about it. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you for your contribution there. But Peter, just quickly going back to the son issue, and then we'll move on. But you claimed earlier that one of his sons is still on the lam, I guess is a word, on the loose.
The guy that organised all the museum events and the London Symphony Orchestra.
But one of them has been
the daughter's being extradited from France. She was arrested soon after, and her extradition was just granted recently. So we're just waiting. It's a long process, but she will be returning to Korea. I mean, she might be appealing the extradition hearing. I think she probably is. And then the oldest son's in jail. But he only got like 4 years.
Right, yeah. So there was one son who was captured.
Yep. And he spent like a month living in the one apartment. He didn't leave the room for the duration of the manhunt.
And what crimes was he brought up on?
Fraud and just being involved in all these, all these money laundering and so on. I've got the links on my site. I've got quite a few articles about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll be sure. We always are sure to add all relevant links to the show notes. We like to be quite extensive with that. I'm not sure if you've seen our Podomatic site or not, where we keep most of our interview archives, but we try to be pretty detailed, just so people can research and investigate and help to work to better educate themselves.
I'm just browsing some headlines now. So there were people arrested for helping him evade the manhunt. That's not specifically him, because he was where do we go? Yeah, corruption. Just one headline: South Korea SEWOL ferry owner's relatives jailed for corruption. His wife was found guilty, but she was given a suspended sentence because of her age. The whole. I mean, that close family. Late SEWOL owner's son given 3-year prison term. Dae-gyun. And the other son is, he's still presumably in the States somewhere. That's where he was based.
His son?
His others. He had 2 sons.
Right.
2 sons, and the other son, he was the one that had organised the connection. So he's the producer on some of these recordings that Michael Nyman made. He made some other recordings apart from the symphony, some chamber pieces also for the Ahe's exhibitions. His name, he went by I think Kevin was his English name, but his Korean name escapes me, but it's on this site somewhere. Keith Yoo. Keith Yoo was his English name. Hyokki Yoo. I just got the English. I haven't got the Korean writing.
One of the things too that he did try to seek asylum. Yoo Byung-eun, he tried to find if it was the Philippines and France would take him in when he.
There were rumors that his followers contacted all these embassies asking, but I mean the cult denied that. But it seems like not a bad course of action to try, because I think he was claiming he wouldn't get a fair trial in Korea.
Yeah. So. And just quickly going back to JYP, I've got a quote here from one of the articles that I came across I thought was quite interesting. But Jin Young Park, the founder of JYP Entertainment, is indirectly related to Yoo Byung-eun, Korea's most wanted man. Turns out his wife, who he married last year, is his niece. The known networks of ferry owner Yoo are extensive. This is the Golden Ambassador angle, too, that I'd mentioned. The
former ambassador to the Czech Republic.
Yeah, last week on the 13th, JTBC News focused a report on Yoo's golden contacts. And this is where I'm thinking, okay, where we see this kind of thing, ambassadors, high-level kind of dealings and so forth, there's bound to be a little bit of,
Provincial governor as well, I think, yeah.
With the pretty women and the money kind of trading hands and moving about, so as well as who knows what else, but all kinds of political favors, trading hands back and forth. So according to various media sources, last year, Yoo opened a publication anniversary event, which U.S. Ambassador Song Kim, as well as the Israeli ambassador and ambassadors from various other countries attended. So representatives from Yoo's nephew-in-law, JYP Entertainment, were also caught on camera. Yoo's networking contacts appeared to include foreign, business, religious, and cultural figures. Officials and prosecutors also showed off their friendship with Yoo. So, I mean, that really kind of lays it out there and really gives, I think, listeners a sense of what we're kind of looking at here as far as the web of intrigue and the.
And if the ferry hadn't have sunk, he would have just been he'd be plain sailing today.
That's right. That's business as usual. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we've got just a few more minutes here winding down. There's there's a couple quick things I'd like to touch on, and anything that just kind of jumps out at you that you'd want to just kind of get out there and let people have a chance to know about before we draw things to a close.
I guess the Scientology cult might be worth mentioning because they have these enormous public events, and they attract all these. Speaking of trying to get public officials on their side, they invite all these former world leaders and judges and as many people as they can to come to their events in the guise of promoting world peace. The cult leaders, like any other cult leader, his version of world peace is everybody obeying him. It's the same kind of peace that North Koreans enjoy. And his inner books are all about the opposite of peace. He talks about people should be killed if they don't follow the Messiah, and of course he's the Messiah. So it's this interesting contrast between how it presents itself to the people that it wants to, attach to its reputation to. And they're really successful in duping people. It seems all they have to do is say, "We love peace," and people come flocking to them. It's astounding. And the event a couple of years ago, they fill stadiums. I mean, all their members are required to go, so they've got about 130,000 members. So when all these people are told to go to a stadium, they fill it, and it looks impressive. Very, very similar to Avalon Games in North Korea. So these dignitaries come to Korea, and it's funny, they're actually given a translator who stays with them 24 hours. And a lot of people are commenting on Twitter, these people, these guests. And one of them was Bob Dotson, who works for, famous TV journalist in America who works for NBC. He was one of them. And he was saying how nice it was that he'd been given this translator and she follows him everywhere and she helps him with everything. But she was really had the role of the same role as a minder has in North Korea.
That's right.
If he'd gone to North Korea and someone had been attached to him and was following him around for 24 hours, he would have seen right through it. Okay, this person's here to see I don't speak to the wrong people and to guide me everywhere. His South Korean minder had the exact same job, and he just didn't see it. He might have seen it afterwards. He made a cryptic tweet a couple of weeks later, something like, I need to reflect on everything that happened in Korea. I followed a few tweets in him, but I don't read them. But he kind of he posted something that might have been indicative of the fact that in reflection, he looked back and thought that was fucking weird.
Well, love bombing. I mean, that's just essential. It's with a cult operation. So
and it's hard when you meet these nice young people smiling. It is hard to imagine them being a part of something quite sinister. Mm-hmm. This group tears families apart. They indoctrinate kids into believing their parents are under the influence of Satan, which is the parents have to go with disconnected from their children, very much like Scientology, or exactly like Scientology. And, it's horrible for a parent to go through. And what else? Yeah, the kids are, kids, I'm talking about kind of early 20s or late teenagers, encouraged to drop out of university and devote all their time to the cult. So, there's kind of almost, it's a form of slavery. And they put them in group houses under the control of a more senior cult member. And then, the indoctrination process is quite easily accomplished when they're actually living in the same house under the same roof as senior cult members.
Speaking of Scientology, I think, was it you that wrote the article, or maybe you shared it on one of your sites, when two cults meet, Shincheonji and Scientology.
Oh, yeah, I shared it. Yeah. So the cults got together.
Yeah.
That's hilarious, isn't it?
There was a conference in Japan, was there?
In Sydney. It was actually in Sydney. So Scientology's been growing in Australia. Pretty small presence, but they're getting, every now and then I hear from someone who has encountered them. So it was interesting to read about two cults I'm interested in teaming up for an event. Quite hilarious.
It is quite, but
together,
and they're often persecuted as well too, and kind of mocked or looked down upon, or people view them with suspicion. So it's like, well, I guess we better band together and kind of try to project a more positive, image. So. But
Scientology also tries to get everybody and anybody to support their cause, so they might have no idea who Scientology is. They might have just heard they're an organisation and said, join us.
Yeah.
Scientology likewise are probably always trying to get anybody and everybody to endorse them, just for their own individual propaganda purposes as well. But it was an interesting connection. This obscure Korean cult that I'd never heard of from a few years ago was... mixing it with the big leagues.
and when you were being sued, Saul Goodman, was he your legal representative? Is that just a joke? I don't know. I saw your picture.
I just saw the photo call.
Oh, jeez.
So I just stuck that on the.
Well,
I didn't really call him.
we stuck it in our slideshow presentation on YouTube here today. So yeah, but
I actually had a lawyer refuse. A lawyer was scared to be involved. Actually, turned out I didn't really need one, but there was a few other issues that I ended up not pursuing in terms of suing them back. But, one lawyer, having spoken to her colleague, she emailed me and said, look, they're going to come after me if I put my name on this. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it was very indicative of how the code operates. At the same time, I was like, shit, I really wanted you to, really hoped you could work with me on this. That's your job.
Well, yeah. It's like organized crime. You get witness protection. You get your name out there, and they play hardball. Those people. It's not a joke.
I mean, I didn't want to put anybody in danger, of course. So I could understand her side, but when I read that email, I was like, it was a bit of a letdown. One way to put it. Yeah.
Well, two quick notes here before we kind of draw an end to things here. And I'm not sure if you've got anything you want to chime in with or contribute to these comments, but let's not forget too, regarding the whole business of Yoo Byung-eun, that and his being on the run and eventually finding this heavily decomposed corpse. In my mind, it's more like just a big puddle of mush, really, than with a few bones scattered about. But anyways, there was a $500,000 reward put out for his capture. There were multiple, I think, false reports and people that were claiming to have captured, or at least sightings, people trying to get that reward. But he was also a master. Him and his son were both known to be, they would often, I'm not sure about plastic surgery. I guess that might be the stage he's at now, or having done that. But masks and disguises, they'd been known to practice these things for, quite some time. And as you said, he was hiding when the police searched his one cabin or pension, the little his retreat, I guess, as it was.
One of them, yeah.
Yeah,
it might have been one of his followers' houses.
He apparently was hiding, as you say, in the little secret room that they'd put together there while they searched.
It's a closet. It wasn't even that secret.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to go there and see how hidden it was. Or was it just a big closet that the cop didn't open or something?
Actually, yeah. No, there's actually a video. There's a video I was looking at just last night and said it was big enough to accommodate up to about 4 people. So. Wow. Yeah, but and then finally, once again, just quickly, JYP, that angle. Did you know that Conan O'Brien recently came to Korea and put a video together with JYP? Real funny.
Oh, okay. I knew Conan came, but I didn't really check out who he was working with.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan. I enjoy Conan's humor and his show and whatnot. But I mean, I really wonder, if he was aware of this connection at all before he decided to go ahead with this. I'm assuming he didn't. But and if he did, would he have still, would he have still wanted to, work on a project with Mr. Park? Yeah. So, but
I guess I think it's safe to assume he probably didn't know. I mean, I think it's a pretty. Perhaps not a well-known connection, really. I mean, I don't know if he would have been up to date.
Yeah.
With these articles, but I think you do your research. I mean, if you just Google him, does it come up? I guess.
I'm sorry, what, JYP Conan O'Brien?
It is amazing how these people that get duped by these cults don't seem to be aware of Google.
Yeah, well, there you go. Another example of maybe, as you say, like these high-profile people, police chiefs in London, all kinds of different celebrities and so forth. Even maybe Conan O'Brien had the wool pulled over his eyes. So, But I don't think if I had the chance, I would not want to have any dealings with the man. Just there's just a little too. There's something a little just in my estimation, a little just too peculiar and funny going on there. So I just prefer to. Just as George Carlin says, just live my life as a spectator, just kind of noting certain things and leaving it at that. So, but and on that note, we'd like to thank you here from the crew aboard the ship, the Robin Hood and Pirate Radio podcasts. it's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed your information and knowledge in this area. And once again, we'll be sure to add all your links and the matters, the issues that we've discussed, all the relevant information.
Thank you very much for your time. And if you want to do the Korean POW issue, that at another date, that's something which is also worth exploring.
The prisoners of war?
Yeah, there were like 60,000. You mentioned it earlier on when you're talking about Vietnam as well. There was like 60,000 Korean soldiers they estimated were kept, and one actually escaped in 1950. 47 years after he was captured. He has a book called Tears of Blood.
1950? Wait, that'd be 1903 then. If you must have the math not.
No, he was captured. He was a soldier in the Korean War. He was captured in 1953.
Yeah.
He wasn't allowed to leave North Korea after the armistice, and he got out in the year 2000.
Okay, and he was a South Korean citizen.
Yeah. Well, he was fighting for the South Korean side.
And let's not forget too, there's also been defectors to the north, like American soldiers and the like. People just
a few, not that many. I think.
Yeah,
just a few.
Weirdos. Yeah. Well, the one thing I will say, just for the record, I think I've shared it here a few times with people, but it really just, my mind is really blown by how in South Korea, it's like we're swimming in a sea of alcohol and drowning, literally, alcohol and pharmaceutical pills. But when it comes to things like medical marijuana, Genesis 1, right there in the Bible, even as the green herb have I given you all things of as meat, that it's strictly prohibited because of pressure from Washington in 1976, where the dictator at the time, the current dictator's father, I always forget his name. What's Pak? The other Park, whatever, Pak Chung-hee? Pak Chung-hee, I think that's his. That he caved in. He's like, sure, we can work on this. And it's once again, imagine kind of quid pro quo kind of deal where if you help us out on this front, we'll help you out with these other matters. So that's heavily, how it is in Korea. Heavily, this crackdown as if it's like heroin or something. Whereas in the north, in this repressive, tyrannical regime in the north, it's complete. There's no law against it. People can smoke all the weed they want. There's said to be like a lot of soldiers and farm workers, laborers, and so forth. They come home, the bodies are aching, they're feeling pretty stressed and just exhausted. They engage in a little bit of the herb there, and they feel quite, they feel quite relieved and refreshed. So very pleasant, euphoric sort of feeling and whatnot. But it's not something a lot of people know about, although there's more awareness that's being generated on that front. So. A little bit off topic, of course, but the POWs, we'll talk about that a little bit, kind of behind the scenes and after the show, after we wrap up here. Now, I'm not sure what your schedule's like. I haven't had a chance to bring this to your attention up, but what we often do is we do have like an exclusive feature content. If you've got to run, that's fine, but we sometimes just kind of meet after the show for the membership content. And have a bit of a discussion, and you never know where things are going to go with that. So it's pretty much freestyling, and anywhere you want to kind of steer things. But if you do have the time, that would be great. If not, we can
stick around for maybe 15 minutes. I've got my band's playing later.
15 minutes.
15, 20.
Yeah, that's okay. You know what? That's fine. You've been more than generous with your time. We appreciate you coming once again, and we will definitely reach out to you and talk to you more about this POW and MII issue and see what we can maybe work on as far as that is concerned.
Well, the whole abduction issue in general, it's related really, but there's a broader abduction of Japanese citizens. It's a broader topic. That's what we're trying to raise awareness yesterday with the DMZ, the kidnap victims, the people who were on the airliner that weren't allowed to come home.
Okay, and we will. That's great. So yeah, once again, we'll be sure to share all those posts and links and so forth. Thank you once again, Peter. All the best, and we're going to bring Pirate. Yeah, we'll talk to you again shortly. Have a good weekend. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
So Pirate Larry, there we go. Just I guess once again 90-minute overview and interview with with our guest Peter Daley. Any thoughts on what matters and issues that we discussed?
Well, Jaffe, the first thieves and the worst thieves are the ones who say, I know God and you don't, so give me some money. If anybody tells you, I know God and you don't, so give me some money, they don't know God and don't give them any money. The first rule is that God doesn't need any money. If you believe in God, then believe that God doesn't need any of the monopoly money that people have printed up just to torment each other with.
All-powerful, all-knowing, just omnipotent, but it's everything you could possibly imagine. But he just happens to be a little short on cash.
Short on cash.
And sexy young women prancing around in the nude. So just
that original sin removal. I think it's gone to a very high level at that point. They used to sell indulgences, in the old church where you could buy days off of your sentence to purgatory. But to be able to remove original sin by screwing the Messiah, that's quite a screw job.
Well, I think as Peter was pointing out, the Moonies they practiced that for quite some time now, and one of the we didn't get into it really, but the Myung Sung Moon or Sung Myung Moon, he the former leader, he passed away a couple years ago, and he did maintain actually extensive business ties with the Bush crime syndicate. Which included, according to a number of investigative reports, gun running and drugs. So, as well as pretty intimate ties to North Korea. So, for anyone that's interested in that.
Trafficking.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Just the whole. You name it. Yeah. But
they have Israel selling, old nukes to North Korea.
Oh, is that right? Didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? Hey. Depleted uranium, or? Yeah,
depleted uranium. They wouldn't blow up, but they'd spread an awful lot of meth.
Well, yeah. I mean, quite a can of worms. We've really managed to go down the rabbit hole today. So, and I think Peter managed. Yeah, he managed to find ourselves quite, deep down the rabbit hole. Well,
this gets deep because if the religious heads couldn't pull off their psychosis, then how are the politicians or the kings and queens going to pull off their psychosis?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, right, exactly.
And then how are the corporate monstrosities going to pull off their psychosis?
Birds of a feather.
They're going to pull off the tyranny of social Darwinism.
Yeah.
If you don't start with the religions first.
Yeah, and they all seem to kind of work together hand in glove, don't they? I mean, the state and the church, as these major institutions throughout most of human history, and right across the planet in various forms, really. So, just a very undisputable, undeniable criminal element. Very engaged within that environment as well. Very that's the game they want to play. I guess a lot of them are born into it, of course, and but others they crave they crave power. They seek the fame, and I'm not so sure about the notoriety, but they want they lust for the power and the fame. So yeah. Well, and some are willing not just to steal for it, but to kill as well. So let's not forget that they will not a problem. So just, but without maybe considering the fuller consequences. But I think that unless I'm not sure if you have anything more to add, Larry, that about does it for today's show. Thanks for being a part of things. And how are things just generally there from the crow's nest? Any enemy ships or anything, any booty or anything that was worth perhaps us maybe taking a closer look at as far as plunder and plunder and pillage.
Yeah, well, from the crow's nest, if I ever see any Messiah that, wants me to kill for him, I'm going to turn the ship around another way.
Yeah, the Charlie Manson kind of syndrome, I guess, eh? So.
Yeah, you got the wrong Messiah. If the Messiah wants you to start killing people for him, you got the wrong Messiah.
Yeah, which is something that I don't think Jesus ever did. Although he did say I come with a sword. I don't think, in my estimation, the way I look at that, it's a lot different than maybe some of the Islamic people kind of view things with their throwing and wielding their swords. But Jesus, I can't help but think, because of the Buddhist influence, that it was a sword of wisdom, and that he was coming to cut through people's their mental ignorance and their mental delusions. So
yeah, it's better if you don't kill people.
The peaceful warrior. I mean, I guess if they have to, they will fight, but only as a last resort in defense of what it is that they need to protect and defend. So, all right, Larry. Well, thanks so much for being a part of things. Much appreciated. Great job.
Thank you, Jeffy. And my little kitty cat, Boots, he's up here on the crow's nest with me, and he says, yar to you.
If you'd like to send us any messages, offer any comments, guest, or show suggestions, this can be accomplished by several means, including dropping by our main website, pirateradiopodcasts.com. We also have a presence on Twitter too, of course, as well as several channels and groups on both minds.com and Facebook. Finally, don't forget we've also got a free MP3 archive database set up over on Podomatic.com. We've got a great schedule lined out for people over the coming months, so be sure to tune in to all our upcoming shows starting on Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone, and of course Saturdays at 12 p.m. Tokyo and Seoul. Future guests include next week's featured personality, parapolitical godfather and founder of Steam Shovel Press, Mr. Ken Thomas. July 1st, we'll be holding our inaugural World Marijuana Roundtable. Following week, Todd E. McDougall from Winnipeg Alternative Media, Wham!, scheduled to join us. July 17th, Susan Mayer from Bye Bye Blue Sky, where we'll be discussing the issue of chemtrails and geoengineering. Finally, on July 23rd, fellow expat Aaron Wadsworth and I will be working on exploring the mystical world of Korean shamanism. So until we meet again out on the high digital seas, I am your host, as always, and Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder, signing off.
Hey, Steven, I really need to have some fun tonight. How do you say, where's the party in Korean? Oh, you just say, 놀 데 없니? Okay, I got it. Hey, ladies, 놀 데 없니? I'm on fire, 누가 좀 날 말려라. 나 미칠 것 같아, 지금 몸이 달아올라. 리듬을 맡아, 몸이 불타올라. 일어나지 몸까지 다 태울 것 같아. Help me! 음악만 나오면 왜 이러는지 몰라. 불빛만 돌아가면 돌아볼 것 같아. 그 속에 뭔가
wakey wakey. I'm on fire, 누가 좀 날 말려봐.